ever stopped to think about why some women choose to live alone? No boyfriend, no partner, and they don't seem to be searching for one either. It's not because they're lonely, lacking options, or nursing heartbreak. The truth is far more unsettling. It challenges everything we've been taught. When a woman chooses solitude, it's not a sign of getting lost. It's about finding herself. And let's be real, self-discovery doesn't come with a round of applause or a crowd cheering her on. What it does come with is silence, strength, and freedom. The kind of freedom that makes most people uncomfortable. No, she's not lonely. She's just selective. She's not cold. She's simply done pouring warmth into relationships that never reciprocated. There's something about a woman who doesn't need a relationship to feel whole that terrifies people. It shatters the idea that she needs to be saved. It breaks down the myth of emotional dependency and uncovers a brutal truth. Most men have no clue how to handle a woman who doesn't need them to feel complete, and many women are still learning to see themselves reflected in that quiet, powerful mirror. Carl Jung once said, "Everything we deny in ourselves becomes part of our shadow." And these women? They're a reflection of that collective shadow. They are what so many dream of becoming, but few have the courage to embody. They don't scream for love. They speak their choices softly. They don't flaunt themselves to get noticed. They retreat to protect their peace. They're not looking for a charming prince. They're focused on their own serenity. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. In a world that pushes for urgency to find someone, these women have discovered the true power of being with themselves. The woman who lives alone without a boyfriend isn't lost. She's operating on a whole different level, a level where nothing is begged for. It's a place where she doesn't need approval, where her presence alone is enough. And maybe that's why she faces so much criticism, so many attempts to label or explain her. But what many still don't understand is that behind what seems like absence, there's a presence that fills the space, a presence that transcends and challenges everything we think we know about emotional connection. She doesn't crave just any love. She wants love that doesn't shrink her, love that lets her be whole. And until that kind of love comes along, she stands strong, completely at peace with who she is. Maybe you don't understand it right now. Maybe you think it's pride, emotional baggage, or some kind of exaggeration. But deep down, in a place you can't quite reach, there's a question stirring inside you, a quiet one that still pulses even when you try to ignore it. What if that quiet path is actually the only one that leads to the most important kind of love? The love that starts with you. The silence around a woman who lives alone isn't emptiness. It's a sanctuary. And while some call her cold, distant, or even arrogant, they don't see the truth. She didn't build that fortress to shut the world out. She built it to protect herself. Carl Jung once said, "Everything we don't face in ourselves, we end up projecting onto others." Maybe that's why so many women confuse solitude with absence, when in reality, it's fertile ground for self-discovery. While most people look outside themselves for fulfillment, this woman turned inward. There, in the vastness of her own mind, she faced the ghosts she had avoided for years. Childhood wounds, unspoken abandonment, attachments disguised as love. Her choice to be alone didn't come from an open wound. It came from a scar that had finally healed. She didn't stop believing in love. She just stopped accepting the kind of love others tried to offer when it only made her feel smaller. This woman knows what it's like to love deeply, to lose herself in someone else. She's given more than she should have. She's begged for crumbs that should have never been given. But at some point, she woke up, and that awakening wasn't a sudden moment. It was a slow, painful realization, a series of disappointments that stopped hurting and started teaching her something important. What you see now isn't coldness, it's emotional maturity. And let's face it, maturity is intimidating because it demands presence, depth, and truth. She's not interested in just any company. She wants reciprocity. She's not moved by empty promises anymore. Now she seeks real, meaningful presence. Maybe that's why she seems so unreachable to many. She doesn't need saving. She needs to be seen. And that takes more than charm or sweet words. It takes courage to dive into the depths of who she really is, where most people are too afraid to go. And that's where they give up. Not because she is difficult, but because she's whole. And when a woman becomes whole, she awakens two extremes in the world. Admiration from those who are also striving for that same wholeness, and fear from those still waiting for someone else to fill the gaps inside them. She doesn't want to complete anyone, she wants to overflow, sharing her life with someone who has also found themselves. Until then, she stays alone, not because she's being dramatic or picky, but because she's loyal to her own soul. This woman isn't hiding. She's protecting herself. There's a huge difference between isolating and preserving your energy. The world doesn't easily understand a woman like her. A world that still believes happily ever after only comes in pairs. A world that sees people without partners as failures, as if being single is some kind of problem. Carl Jung once said, "Where convention rules, there's little room for authenticity." And this woman doesn't live by society's rules. She lives by her essence. She hears things like, "You're too picky. You should be more open. Nobody's perfect." And she responds with a calm, almost ironic smile. Because what others call picky, she knows is simply setting boundaries, knowing what she deserves. It took her years to realize it, but now she knows. She's not looking for perfection. She's looking for someone mature enough to love her without breaking her down. Someone who's done the inner work she's already faced. And let's be honest, you don't find that just anywhere. The discomfort she causes isn't in what she says. It's in what she represents. She's living proof that happiness doesn't come from depending on someone else, and that scares people. It forces them to face the truth about themselves. Men who thrive on making women feel insecure feel threatened. Women who still crave validation feel judged. But she's not here to confront anyone. She's simply being, and the authenticity of her freedom is a brutal mirror to those still chained to society's expectations. This woman isn't in a hurry. She doesn't need to rush or please anyone. She respects her own pace, and for that, she stirs a quiet rage in a world that demands everything happen on its timeline. Now, she craves depth while the world chases distractions. She wants real, meaningful presence, while the world only offers shallow availability. She longs for soul-level connections, while everyone else is trying to look interesting on the next Instagram story. And when she says no, it's not a game. It's the truth. When she walks away, it's not drama. It's self-defense. When she chooses to stay home instead of going out with someone who doesn't fill her cup, it's not arrogance. It's clarity. And that clarity wasn't just given to her, it was earned through pain and surrender. It's her greatest revolution because she doesn't live to please others. She lives to simply be. And that simple act of just being is what makes her so unsettling to the system. What unsettles people most about this woman isn't her solitude. It's the peace she's found within herself. Carl Jung once said, "Those who look outward dream, but those who look inward awaken." And it was that inner journey that transformed her. It wasn't easy. It was a long, painful process of peeling off masks, confronting emotional dependency, and rebuilding herself piece by piece. She no longer defines herself through the eyes of others. She sees herself through her own eyes, and that changes everything. How many times have you wondered if being alone means failure or freedom? How many times have you felt the need to justify not having someone by your side? This woman has felt that too. She once believed there was something wrong with her for being alone in a world that glorifies couples, even the unhappy ones. But one day, everything clicked. She realized it's better to be alone than to lose yourself in a relationship. That moment marked a turning point. She made a vow to herself. Never again would she accept less than what she truly deserves. Her journey isn't a straight line. There are days filled with doubt, moments of longing, nights of quiet reflection, but there's also a strength that deepens with every decision made from a place of awareness. She learned that real love doesn't suffocate, doesn't consume, doesn't manipulate. The love she desires is the kind that frees her, that uplifts her, and supports her without holding her down. Until that love comes, she continues to grow on her own, not out of pride, but out of integrity. She is the living embodiment of Carl Jung's individuation process. She faced her shadow, dove deep into her unconscious, and emerged stronger and more whole than ever before. And now, knowing herself fully, she refuses to be half of anything again. She doesn't want someone to complete her. She wants someone to share her awareness with. That's intimidating to many because it requires emotional maturity. And sadly, most people love out of fear, lack, or possession. If she walks alone today, it's because every step she takes is filled with wisdom. Every no she gives is an act of self-respect. Every time she chooses absence, it's a reminder that love should never be begged for. She no longer feels the need to prove anything to anyone. That certainty, born from the deepest part of her soul, transforms everything around her. A woman who has rediscovered herself isn't dangerous because of any weapon she holds. She's dangerous because of her clarity. The woman who lives alone without a boyfriend is not the same woman who once begged for love. Something inside her broke, and it was that break that set her free. Because sometimes, only when the soul collapses can it find a new form. Carl Jung once said, "The tree that grows to heaven must also have roots that reach down to hell." That's exactly what she experienced. She journeyed through the depths of her own story, faced fears that were passed down, carried ancestral pain, and dealt with traumas that weren't just hers, but those of all the women before her. She broke cycles. She said no to relationships that kept repeating the same toxic patterns. She realized it wasn't her responsibility to heal anyone, save anyone, or accept scraps out of fear of being alone. And when she stopped accepting less, the world tried to convince her she was wrong. But she stood her ground. At first, it was with uncertainty, then with awareness, and finally with invulnerability. Because someone who's faced their own abyss no longer fears being alone. She learned to nourish herself with silence and to find warmth in her own presence. She's not unreachable. She simply doesn't allow herself to be invaded. There's a huge difference between opening your heart and letting yourself be torn apart. She opens, yes, but only for those who come in truth, not with rehearsed lines or empty promises. She's seen enough to know the difference between genuine presence and just a performance. Her intuition is razor sharp. Her energy acts as a filter. She can sense what lacks depth from a mile away, and she won't hesitate to walk away. Her transformation isn't surface level, it's deep and archetypal. It's as if she's tapped into an ancient wisdom, a memory that women weren't born to serve, but to express, not to be shaped, but to overflow. And in accessing that deeper part of herself, something awakened. A wild woman, intuitive and emotionally sovereign. A woman who, though she walks alone, is far from lost. She's in connection with something much bigger than the world's labels. She's in tune with her own destiny, and no matter how much they try to reduce her, cold, difficult, distant, nothing sticks. She no longer lives to fit in. She lives to grow, to expand. She doesn't fight for attention anymore. She radiates presence. She doesn't wait to be chosen. She does the choosing. And that shift, choosing instead of waiting, throws off those who still try to control the feminine. She's no longer playing that game. She's crossed a threshold, and on the other side she found a truth. The real relationship starts when you've loved yourself enough to not need anyone. There's something sacred about the way she walks through life. She doesn't need applause or approval from anyone. Her confidence is quiet, and it's in that silence where her true strength lives. Carl Jung said that everything we face within eventually becomes our destiny. And that's why, by choosing herself again and again, she's become the author of a destiny few can understand, but many secretly envy. She doesn't try to fill empty spaces with empty promises. She doesn't beg for space in anyone's life. She's learned that presence is never something you should beg for. It should be invited. And when that invitation doesn't come from a place of truth, she simply declines. She doesn't react with anger or bitterness. She steps away with the dignity of someone who's been lost enough times to never repeat that same mistake. What most people don't realize is that this woman still longs for love. She still wants to be held, touched, chosen. But now she wants it in a way that doesn't require her to lose herself. Because she spent far too long trying to fit into molds too small for the soul she carries. Now, she only offers herself where there's space to be whole, and that requires a level of maturity beyond just romance. It takes awareness, and it takes having faced your own shadow and still choosing to love. She's not looking for fairy tales. She's looking for a soul connection, where neither person dominates nor submits, but where both can grow side by side without dimming each other's light, quieting each other's pain, or shrinking each other's dreams. And if all of that feels too much for some, that's okay, because she'd rather wait than survive on emotional crumbs. To many, that might sound like arrogance, but in reality, it's pure self-love. This is a new kind of woman, a woman who's walked away from the surface level, who got tired of being just desired and chose to be respected. She chose to be alone, not because she gave up on love, but because she finally understood that true love doesn't demand you deny yourself. And when a woman understands that, everything in her world changes. She doesn't need to shout to be heard. Her presence speaks before she even opens her mouth. Wherever she goes, the energy shifts, subtly but unmistakably. It's not some mystical force. It's energy. It's the weight of someone who's faced her deepest battles and returned in peace, not because she conquered all her fears, but because she learned to live with them without being defeated. Carl Jung would say that she found wholeness not by eliminating her opposites, but by embracing them. This woman doesn't reject love. She just learned not to submit to relationships where one person must shrink so the other can thrive. She wants love, yes, but only in a form where her true self doesn't have to be edited. A love where she can be both shadow and light, laughter and tears, silence and storm. She realized that those who only love the pretty parts haven't yet understood what real love is, and those who demand constant sweetness haven't yet learned to appreciate the necessary bitterness, the very thing that fuels growth. She's too whole to settle for half love, too free to accept relationships disguised as care, too sensitive to stay in shallow connections, and at the same time strong enough to keep walking this path even when it hurts, even when it's lonely, even when others don't understand. This is the journey of an awakened soul, choosing deeper truth over instant validation. Deep down, the world fears women like her, women who don't need anyone to feel complete, women who don't bow down, women who refuse to be shaped because they challenge old rules, question outdated patterns, and break silent emotional contracts that once said a woman's worth is only tied to having someone by her side. And when she breaks those contracts, when she redefines her own story, she inspires others to do the same, and that, to the world, is dangerous. So she keeps moving forward, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sometimes with her head held high, but always with her feet firmly planted on the ground. Because now she knows she's not alone. She's with herself. And after everything she's been through, that's more than enough. The love that comes after this won't be a rescue. It will be a celebration. It won't come to fill her. It will come to overflow. When a woman chooses to walk alone, the world rushes to tell her she's making a mistake. But deep inside, she feels something aligning within her. It's not pride or rebellion. It's a rare kind of wisdom that can only grow in silence, the kind Jung called individuation. It's the process of becoming fully yourself, without masks, without compromise. And when that happens, nothing outside her can overpower the truth that pulses in her chest. That truth doesn't need to shout. It shows itself in how she quietly closes a door without resentment, in how she pulls away when the environment no longer nurtures her, in how she smiles peacefully even without anyone by her side, because she's discovered that being alone isn't a punishment. It's a vow of loyalty to her own soul. And the soul of an awakened woman doesn't submit, doesn't dim, doesn't beg. It simply is, and that is enough. The world will keep telling her she's missing something. It will keep offering distractions, shiny, empty relationships designed for display. But she's already seen behind the curtain. She's understood. It's not about finding someone. It's about never losing yourself again. And when that realization hits, everything changes. Desire turns into discernment. Lack becomes choice. Waiting becomes a path. What once hurt now heals. What once held her back now sets her free. You can feel it deep within, a stir, a spark. Maybe it's an old memory, a wound that never quite healed, or a feeling that never made sense. Maybe it's the image of a woman you once knew, or the woman you've become. Either way, something inside you is asking to be seen more clearly. Something that no longer fits in old molds. Something that, if you allow it, could completely transform the way you love, relate to others, and most importantly, the way you love yourself. That woman who walks alone isn't just someone who doesn't fit the mold. She's a living symbol of emotional freedom, a reminder that it's possible to rebuild your life at your own pace, without fear, and without needing to prove anything to anyone. She doesn't walk ahead of anyone, and she doesn't follow either. She carves her own path, unique, invincible. Along the way, she lights fires for others who are waking up too. If something in this story touched you, maybe it's because, deep down, you're ready for a new kind of love. A love that begins with reconciling with yourself. A love that thrives on silence, presence, and truth. A love that can't be bargained for, begged for, or faked. And if that love hasn't come yet, maybe it's because you first needed to become the woman who no longer accepts less than she deserves. If this message found you at the right moment or awakened something deep within you, I invite you to share it. Don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with other women who need to remember their own strength. Like it, comment, and subscribe. Not out of impulse, but out of choice. Because when something touches your soul, the least you can do is let it keep resonating within you and through you